Hello there. Well, welcome to another edition of Broken Hourglass Theater. I had originally called this Eternal Hourglass Theater, but then I found out that that title actually exists. It's a not a particularly popular book, but somebody else already came up with the idea of the Eternal Hourglass. And the Eternal Hourglass in this book, it stopped time. This won't stop time. Yeah, it will just sit here and be blue there, like so. Yeah, I drank a lot of coffee, or I drank a lot of coffee. Yeah, I don't really pay much attention to grammar. I don't think it's particularly important. I'm like a rap star in that way. Yeah, but that's about the only way that I'm like a rap star, except for maybe a big ego. I got that too. But yeah, I was rhapsodizing earlier about things that used to be. One of the things I used to do is I used to get on the internet for years and years and years and talk to people and argue with people and debate people about God, religion, etc., etc., etc. And I learned quite a bit through that time about people. I didn't learn a whole lot about God, but I learned a whole lot about people. And so, yeah, I considered it time well spent. At some point, I realized that I had learned all I could learn that way, so I just stopped doing it. And I was just running into the same things and writing the same things over and over again to the point where I was like, I should have a saved file. It's like, okay, this reply for this reply for that, you know, just have do it all, do it all as like a public service or whatever. But one of the things I learned was that um, people do not understand the basics, and if you do not understand the basics of something, you got a problem. I don't understand basketball. I'll look at basketball, but I don't understand what them guys are doing and why they're doing it. Why they're doing it. Like a pick and roll is one of the most basic plays in basketball. I would not bet my house if I had one on what a pick and roll is or how I could explain it. I've been watching basketball since before the Lakers had Magic Johnson. I still don't understand a pick and roll. The way I understand it is there's like two guys out high and the one guy gets in the way of the one guy's defender, and one guy rolls to the basket, and the other guy throws it to him. That's the best I got on a pick and roll, but I don't understand basketball. So if I don't understand the basics, I should not be talking about basketball uh, in any authoritative kind of way. People do not have that problem when they're talking about God, and I find that very interesting because I would think that uh, God would be much more complicated than basketball. Yeah, people don't understand how language works because the language is everybody knows language is a symbol. They know that the word cup is not this, right? They know that. But what they don't know, or they don't seem to understand at least, is that the word cup does not represent this. Okay? The word cup represents your experience of this, whatever this is. And the way you experience things is through your body. Like I can feel that this is like a hard cylindrical object. I can see that it's white and it's got little decorative designs on it and it's got a handle and I can feel and see all that. I can even smell that it has some pretty stale coffee in it, and that's my experience of it. That is what the word cup represents. It represents an experience because I haven't read much philosophy, but there's this dude whose name was Immanuel Kant or Kant. I don't know which. I'm not an educated person, but he explained that because this is the way we experience reality is through a body that's conditioned by survival needs and has a limited way of interacting with reality, that the expression is a priori, and it means that even before we get started, we can't ever know this thing. as it truly is. This is our experience of it. And since most people say, yeah, that cup is white and it's got designs on it, it's got a handle, and everybody can agree on it, it's not a problem. Then when you start talking about more abstract things where you don't have a sense object, you don't have something you can hold in your hand and you can feel. When you start talking about, say, emotions, say anything more abstract, you run into that. Now, the way the parable of the blind men and the elephant helps people to understand this fact is they have these guys that are blind, and that sets up a barrier between them and reality. The reality that they're experiencing is an elephant. And so the one blind man goes up to the elephant, and he touches the ear, and he says the ear is like a fan. And the other blind man says, no, you're wrong, and ear is like a pillar, because he touches the leg. And the other blind man touches the tail and says, nope, elephant's like a whip, you're a bunch of idiots. And the other blind man touches the tusk, and he says, you're all crazy, and elephant's like a spear. And then they fight about it, and they fight about it, and none of them are wrong, and none of them are right. And that explains subjectivity. They just don't understand that objective, that's just a word, man. Objective just means that a bunch of people agree on a subjective experience. And so they come up with this word objective to distinguish between a truly subjective thing like love, like when people say they love somebody. To a biologist, all love is when that organism's needs and desires are being satisfied and they have pleasurable sensations. That's all love is to a biologist. And so that's a really subjective thing, because people can say they love people that mistreat them, and they love people for that don't love them back, and all this. Nobody seems to agree on what this love thing is. Or there wouldn't be all those divorces and whatnot, I guess. I got an itch, I'm sorry. But back to our subject at hand, is that's what causes all the problems, is that people don't understand that basic thing. It's like that words, school bus, anything, any word that you use is representing an experience. It's not representing the thing yourself. What you see is not what is. What you see is what you see. The sky is not blue because you see it blue. The sky is blue because light reflects off of it in a certain way, and it looks that way to us. I assume it looks different to creatures with different eyes and different ways of perceiving it. I don't know if dogs can see blue, but let's say they can't see blue. A dog looks at the sky, he doesn't see blue. Now, is he wrong if he says the sky is gray and we say it's blue? No, we're just perceiving things in different ways. And people do this with God. And what people do, is they won't acknowledge this fact because they want to believe so badly, and they want to feel that rock of security underneath them, that they want to think of their belief as knowledge. And so this will be offensive. I'm sure this video will be offensive to some people that I would say this, but I don't know God. You don't know God. Don't nobody know God. Nobody. That's any more than those blind men knew that elephant. And because we're excluded from knowing, just because we have needs, we have a body that we experience reality through that's conditioned by survival. And yeah, that's like the first thing you have to know, is those two things. You have to know what subjectivity is, and you have to know that language does not represent an object, it represents an experience of an object or a thing. So, now, what else do I want to talk about regarding that? What was that about? Something flew by the window and made a bright light. Okay, let's make this personal now. Me, Y'all know me. I had many, many health problems when I was very young. What that causes you to do is it causes you to wonder about such things as God and the universe and death. You start thinking about death. If you have a spinal tumor when you're 14, you start thinking about death. Believe me, when you're laying on a table and a doctor tells you that you have a such and such percent chance of being in a wheelchair, a such and such percent chance of being a quadriplegic, and a such and such chance of not surviving the operation. And you're 16 years old, getting shots in your stomach, getting injections in your stomach because the your damaged spine is causing your stomach to muscles to contract and convulse and such things. You start thinking about death real early, and not like death isn't like those teenagers that go all emo and sit in a room and put on black mascara. And death is a thing sitting next to you, like this hourglass, except for it's more like this. Hey, my hourglass is working. I thought there wouldn't be much time in there, except for when you hear things like that, you see like 4 or 5 grains in that son of a bitch. You don't see a whole lot of time. So death is something that walks around with you when you're going through something like that. And when that was when I had my spinal tumor, and then when I had spinal reconstruction when I was 18 years old, and ended up being 6'1" and about 118 uh, pounds, nothing but skeleton, and they actually sent me home from the hospital because they figured out they didn't know what else to do with me because I just kept losing weight and losing weight, and they didn't know that I had contracted CRPS from the surgeries that they did to me. So they didn't know what was wrong with me, and they just thought all my complaints, because I'm not a big complainer, they thought all my complaints about post-operative distress and such, they all thought that that was just normal stuff. They're like, this just happened because you had like this big, huge surgery. They didn't know that I had contracted a disease from that surgery, and that's what CRPS is. A trauma. It's a disease that's brought on by physical trauma. Like the only other guy that I met that had CRPS, he dropped a heavy piece of machinery on his foot and broke like nearly all the bones in his foot, and then his foot never healed right, as far as he had pain and neuropathy and all kind of horrible sensations in his foot. See, I got that from here down. From you can tell from where the shirt is, where the madness begins. You know, and when I say madness, I mean madness. I was thinking about this the other day that I haven't worn a pair of jeans in probably. I used to have a wallet like everybody else and carry a wallet in my back pocket. At least that's how we did it back in the day. I don't know how guys do things nowadays, but it's been at least 10 years since I wore a pair of jeans, and that's because the way my legs are, when I would walk, I couldn't feel when my jeans were pulling tight, and I couldn't walk right in jeans. I just can't walk because I couldn't feel that restriction and adjust for that restriction. Uh, so you don't you're not going to think about that because your experience of jeans is different than my experience of jeans. My blue jeans are my enemies and cause me to fall. Your blue jeans are probably your friends and you like them. But yeah, I would walk, and then when they would stretch tight, I wouldn't be able to adjust for that, and I wouldn't. Yeah, like I would step short and then stumble and stuff, and that goes along with other stuff that CRPS is for me, like stepping on a tack and walking around with a tack in my foot and thinking that's just another pain in my foot, or standing on ice. That one time that I told on here on another account where my feet start sliding apart on the ice and I just start shrinking down. But because I can't feel things right, I'm just like, whoa, man, I'm having a flashback. I'm getting smaller. I'm turning into an elf. I'm turning into a gnome. Nope, what's going on here? And then I realized that my legs were sliding apart. But by the time I realized that they're like that far apart, and it's weird because I still have the motor function and I can still walk and stuff, but the sensory function is so fucked up that it impairs uh, my my motor function and my balance and things like that. So I can't wear jeans. I'll feel tack in my foot as just another pain in my foot, and be able to walk around with a tack in my foot and be like, well, my foot feels weird today. And another thing is like, people don't think about this, but you have two things that control your balance, and that's your eyes, and that's your semicircular canals in your ears. Now, how this happened or why this happened, I don't know. CRPS is a freaky deal, but my balance centers in my ears, they don't work like yours do. I am completely eye dependent for balance. So I learned this the hard way, as I've learned most things in my life. But if I was to stand up and take off a shirt, I have to be very, very careful because I can't feel my legs right, and there's something wrong with my semicircular canals and my balance. So I've actually fallen over just from trying to take a shirt off and covering my eyes, or like I walked out of a friend's house and their porch light wasn't working, and I walked out into complete darkness without my eyes having time to adjust, and everybody was outside, and I said, listen, I'm about to fall, don't anybody freak out, I'll be fine. And I just fell over in the grass. I was like, I can't see, I had to have somebody help me up or I should have sat on the ground until my eyes adjusted and I could see a little better. But if I can't see, I'm falling down. Anybody comes up, if I had a girlfriend and she came up behind me and covered my eyes, I would fall on her and break her. I would just fall over. It'd be ridiculous. So yeah, so that's maybe why I understand the whole thing about subjectivity, and how we're separated from reality, and how we have individual vessels with individual needs, and which we experience this reality through, and all that stuff about how we're actually separate from reality, and we don't think about this stuff. Obviously, you don't think about this stuff all the time. You don't think about how it would be ridiculous to sit there and think about, like, well, I'm driving down the road now, but this isn't my experience, or this isn't really a car in front of me so much as my physical representation of a car to help me to interact with my nobody thinks like that. But I've had some downtime in my life to think about these things. Another way to explain it, like, is you got a flower. Now, you got a flower is a flower is a flower. Let's say that flower is the same. Maybe there's a flower on this cup. That flower is the same. Well, the cup's not even a picture, so that's a horrible idea. The flower is the same, but the bee and the man, they have different needs concerning flowers. I could give a fuck about flowers, but bees, I guess, love the shit out of flowers. For one thing. For another thing, bees got a whole different eyeballs than I have. So a bee looks at a flower and they see something completely different, and flower seems to be vital to their existence in some way. And I see a flower and I see something completely different, and a flower doesn't mean a whole lot to me. Now, who's right, the me or the bee? Well, we're both right. We just have different vehicles of experience. Now, I was thinking about this, like, trying to tie this in with science and how science works, because a lot of people don't understand that either. But science uses something called empiricism, which all data is collected through our senses, like I talked about earlier, and that's called empirical data. Like, anyways, so the interesting thing about science that people don't understand is science. There is no truth. There's just truth is doesn't has nothing to do with science at all. Science, we have an explanation that is the best explanation that we have. It's the most supported by tests. It's the most uh, yeah. It's just agreed upon by a bunch of people. Like, this is the best explanation we had. This explanation works. It's testable. It has words that I forget because I haven't thought about or talked about this stuff in years. Shit, can't think of the word that they have a word for it. But uh, oh, Stampy. Oh man, she's stomping above my bedroom right now. I don't know if you caught that or not. But anyways, in science, there's no such thing as truth. Okay, Truth. That's part of what religion tells us. Religion tells us, well, this is the truth. This is the way things are. And then guess what happens? Well, we go through advancements, and we're like, wait a minute, we're finding some things out here that this truth about our universe being centered around the Earth, hmm, doesn't seem to be true. But these religious guys are telling us it's the truth. And then let's throw this guy in jail over this because he's trying to say that this truth is not really the truth. And just because he has a pretty damn good explanation, we don't care. So yeah. Anyways, yeah, my personal experience when I was going through all that bullshit and getting those surgeries and stuff is like, I was like, man, fuck this. I want to know what this shit is all about. I was like, if I'm going to go through this, if I'm going to live the rest of my life with some kind of incurable goddamn disease that seems to be fairly unpleasant and has some pretty nasty symptoms, I want to go meet this Godfellow and ask him what it is about me that pisses him off so much. So I didn't know this at the time because I was a naive person and a very sheltered person. But what I was doing was a very ancient ritual, and I guess you could call it a vision quest, for a lack of a better term. I went on this long walk, and when I say long, I mean like miles and miles and miles. I believe I would say 8 miles. Yeah, 8 miles one way, without water, without food, without anything. And I sat by the water in this woodsy area by this pond that we used to fish. It was quiet there, and I remember what it was like. And I was just left myself open, and I had like a brief insight that, like, I guess you could call it a consciousness expanding type of experience. At the age of 20, I did this, and saw things in a different way and have been a different person ever since. So I had the born again experience. If I was a Christian, that's what you would call it. I don't. I consider myself a human being. I don't put a label on whatever I am. I'm just a human being, not a Christian, not a Buddhist. I'm not anything. I'm a person. And so, but yeah, I changed from that point on, and I just had a brief insight into. I think I went so far outside of it that I understood that there was some kind of reality that is more or less connects everything. That's the best I can explain it. I can't put it into words any better than anybody else has. And words, they are not helpful when it comes to this thing. God is something each person has to figure out for themselves. And I wrote a novel. Let's see if I can put my character's words, recall it. Let's see. The thing was not evil in and of itself, but when it became words, it became poison, twisting men and making them ill, as he was twisted, as he was ill. So yeah, representing it in symbol makes people think that you understand. Representing this experience that people have, this God experience, representing it in symbol, and then creating a kind of idol out of these symbols. And it's a poison that has afflicted mankind for millennia. And that's why I don't. And that, my friends, is why I don't talk about God. Uh, I just don't. You're like, well, you're using that word a whole lot. You're talking about God. I'm like, nope, I'm not talking about God. I'm talking about my experience, and I'm talking about the words. I can't. I'm not talking about God or what I think about God or what I believe about God unless you had a reverse inquisition on me, and instead of getting me to uh, oh, I forget. I had a whole rap about that, but I forget that. I'm distracted by too many noises going upstairs, or some water running or something like that. But yeah, hopefully I explained that adequately, and that was worth your time. My hourglass actually seems to be functioning today. So, but yeah, I definitely have to change the name to Broken Hourglass Theater because Eternal Hourglass has been taken already. Somebody else already came up with it. Broken Hourglass, not as nice and poetic sounded, but somebody came up with that and put it in a novel. I can't remember her name or I would credit her, but I'll just change the name on the other video to Broken Hourglass Theater. I'm not. See if sand is going. Sand isn't going through there currently, and it seems like it's loose. Yeah, it's loose. It's really broken. I might have to duct tape that thing together. But anyways, uh, yeah, I don't think I need to talk any more about that. If I didn't uh, nail it or make at least express those difficult abstract concepts in a way that was accessible to you, talking more isn't going to help. But I just like to talk, and I had very little sleep too. I could not sleep to save my life last night, and this is I had about, I would say, 3 hours of sleep, and this is my third cup of coffee, and my heart is beating too fast. I can feel my. It's another thing about, a lot of people can't feel their heartbeat or never feel their heartbeat. My dad was in AFib arrhythmia for a month and never knew it. They said you've been in AFib arrhythmia since the last time we saw you. Never knew it because he couldn't feel his own heartbeat, but I can feel my own heartbeat most of the time. I don't like the way it's beating right now. But yeah, that's a lot to think about, isn't it? The things that I talked about. But yeah, I would say I believe in something. You, I don't even like to use that word God because it means so many different things to so many different people. But yeah, I believe, I can tell you one thing that I believe. I believe that there's something beyond this that none of us can really know fully. And I believe that uh, whatever is behind all this is eternal. It doesn't, it is not subject to this. Time, time is a, oh wow, now I really broke it. Yeah, time, there's an infinity symbol. Cool. Yeah, the infinite thing behind everything that goes on and on and on forever, for infinity, and has no beginning and no end. And we live in a world of life and death and beginnings and endings. So this is very hard for us to understand. But the way I think about it is I think about this particular incarnation of the universe as a single heartbeat in the lifetime of an eternal organism. Like we think that this incarnation, like whenever this material universe started, through the whole process of whenever it's supposed to end, it's just one heartbeat and something that just goes on and on and on. And this is what I believe is I believe that it's just eternal and it never had a beginning and it never had a beginning and it's never going to end. And yeah, that is what I believe. And I don't understand it. I can't comprehend it. Because once human beings became self-aware, we're like, man, one thing we know for sure is like Fred over there, he ain't moving. We gotta get him in the ground, man. Like the Primus song says, gotta get him in the ground before he starts to smell. We know that things end, and we know that things begin because babies get born. But I believe that there's something beyond all that that has no beginning and has no end and is eternal in both directions. I don't know if infinite is the right word. I don't know. That's what I believe. I don't talk about God or what happens with people. I think is they put personality traits upon God and make him angry or make him concerned and make him like us. like human beings. And I don't know if that's also part of the conflict. You ever notice that about people that, if they're like an angry uh, person, their God tends to be angry and judgmental. And if they're like a mellow person, their God seems to be a little bit more easygoing. I've noticed that about people. and, and now I got somebody that is on the way out that I know and that I love. And there's really nothing you can say to anybody in that situation that, I told her before that I thought she was a good person. And, maybe I should go up there and have a talk with her. I wasn't able to do that for my folks. So that's a whole opening a whole another can of worms though, and we're at the half an hour mark right now. And yeah, I should think about being a man and doing that and seeing. You never know. I don't know how to even handle something like that. That seems like it's above my pay grade to go in there and talk to somebody and just reassure them that they're a good person and that they're not the person they used to be. They changed into a good person, and that whatever waits for them there is not going to judge them on who they were, but who they are and who they became. Well, yeah, that's something for me to think about. Those conversations, they never go well, though. When you want to actually have a conversation with somebody, I've had very few conversations that I can remember that did not end with trouble. When it comes to the G word, and it is for reasons that if you go back to the beginning of this that I've already explained. And it's all so pointless. It's just kind of sad. There's really no reason for it. All people have to do is be humble and say, like, look, this is what I believe. It's not what I know. I don't really have to kill you or hit you with a bunch of stones over this. We can exist peacefully together. Just because your God seems to be really pissed off all the time and my God is not quite as pissed off, don't mean we got to fight about it. But that's not how, as you know, that's not how, the way the world works. And once again, that is why I do not talk about my personal beliefs in God. The only thing I will say about it is I believe in something, and it's something that has no beginning and no end. And that is the limit of what I will say about it. You could put me in a torture rack and I won't tell you anymore. I probably would. I'm not real fond of pain. I don't like it. I would just probably tell you whatever. I gotta be honest. I would probably tell you whatever you wanted to hear. Just stop putting those nails in my feet. I've never claimed to be a brave one. I'm not a brave person. But since I always have no problem with the alpha. I always have a problem with the omega. I have no problem with the beginning, but them endings, man, those are always a bitch. But it's funny the places that you can learn really, really important things. And one of the things that I learned was from a relatively obscure Johnny Depp movie called "What's Eating Gilbert Grape." That bravery has a context, and there was a big, giant, fat woman that could barely get out of her house, and it was a huge act of bravery for her to walk out of the house and go to the post office. It's just like a huge act of bravery. It's like that's a Tuesday for everybody else. Then like I have a friend who's like physically superior, at least he used to be, and it's my policeman friend I talk about from time to time. That he would get in a fight with three guys, and it took less bravery than that fat woman walking to the store, or me walking across the floor in the morning in slippery socks. So it all has a all has the context of bravery. But that's what that movie taught me. It's like, um, and there's people that have a disorder. I don't know if it's part of sociopathy where they don't actually experience any fear at all. It's like they have no fear. It's not. It's not part of them. So how can you say that? Bravery doesn't exist without fear. And again, we're such individual peoples. Like for me to pull this down and walk around, just wear a shirt, pull this down over this hypersensitive area on my skin. For me to do that and to walk out in a place where I couldn't take my shirt off without attracting attention to myself and just be stuck there for half an hour, that would actually, like wearing a shirt, actually take a little bit of bravery on my part. How crazy is that? That's when you know you're fucked, man. When, a shirt can be a dire enemy. I've missed my calling in life. I used to joke about it. I was like, there's only like two jobs I would be really qualified, and that would be maybe three. We'll make it three. That would be a boxer, a professional wrestler, or a lifeguard. If I was, but I can't do any of them, of course, because I am crippled up and disabled. But there's not too many jobs that you can get where you don't have to wear a shirt. Yeah, the, yeah. All right, that's enough of me. That's 35 minutes of your time. All right, I hope that's better than I think it is. Sometimes it is, and sometimes it's worse. But this is not a non-essential thing, so if I feel like I made myself understood in it, I will put it up. If I didn't, I won't put it up. But on the other types of videos I do, it doesn't matter if I'm a babbling idiot or a fool. I'm just checking in to record the whole benzo withdrawal process. That's a little different than what this is. This is just me uh, expressing some opinions and ideas, and basically talking about what was is one of my primary interests. It's always been psychology as it relates to religion and belief in God, atheism, all that stuff. Always been fascinating to me ever since I was 20 years old and I sat in the woods that night and had my little epiphany, my little moment underneath the Bodhi tree, and saw things in a different way and turned into a different person. So, until next time, adios.